This is Seth Rich. He worked for the DNC. A lot of people believe that he was the leaker of the DNC emails that is believed to have cost Hillary Clinton the election. Oh yeah, and he's dead. On July 10, 2016, he was said to have been the victim of a robbery where nothing was stolen from him. He still had his watch and his wallet and his cell phone. So that's probably real, right? Even though there's no evidence for this, that he was shot in the back with intent and they wouldn't take anything. But that's a robbery, right? Well, if that's a robbery, I'm a giraffe named Susan. Rich's family hired a former MPD homicide detective to run a private investigation, and this detective believes there is a cover-up and the police have been told to back down from the investigation. Pretty suspicious if this actually had to do with a botched robbery and not a big government conspiracy. Russian hacker Gustafer 2.0, who's also assumed to be dead now, has said that there was no DNC hack and that his whistleblower was in fact Seth Rich. There is new evidence on Seth Rich's computer that he did have communication with WikiLeaks. No one seems to know for sure where this computer is being held for some reason. Right now, we just need to wait for that information from that computer to be exposed to the public and hopefully not buried like everything else about this. Also, the name Seth Rich happens to perfectly fit in the redacted space in the batch of FBI released Hillary Clinton emails. What a coincidence! So what does this mean? This seems to suggest that Seth Rich was the DNC whistleblower during the 2016 election and not the Russians. There's a reason that the DNC still hasn't released their servers to the FBI, even though they allege that the servers were hacked into. It would be like me calling the cops saying that my house has been broken into, but when the police arrive to investigate, I don't let them inside. It's a little weird. Seth also happened to die mysteriously in a way that doesn't make sense and there's no evidence for, and the police are not able to investigate further. It's like they have so much hubris now that they aren't even trying because they feel like they can get away with anything, including murder, because they do. Now, who could have orchestrated this murder? Well, it's not hard to imagine who would have the most to lose by this email leak. If you're not convinced that this ties back to Hillary or Podesta, there's also this. In a John Podesta leaked email from February 22, 2015, John Podesta writes, "I'm definitely making an example of the suspected leaker, whether or not we have any real basis for it." Make an example? How, John? By shooting them in the back and calling it a robbery? Where is the mainstream media on this? I've only seen a couple of reporters cover this, like Fox or Sean Hannity. Where's the Wall Street Journal, MSNBC, or CNN? I read a Washington Post article saying that the story was untrue because the family of Seth didn't think he was leaking information. I don't know about you, but I probably wouldn't be telling my family over breakfast any government secrets that could get us all killed. This is a big story no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. This is a pretty big elephant in the room not to be talking about. So if you're not going to report on it, or you're going to say it's fake news, or you're not allowed to talk about it because you'll end up in a botched robbery, just admit that you're owned by the Democrats so we can all move on. Thank you.
Donald Trump has had a disastrous few weeks. If you look at the polls, he needs a miracle. In the American political lexicon, there's such a thing as the October surprise. The stuff that you're sitting on, is an October surprise in there? Do you even know what you're sitting on?
WikiLeaks never sits on material. Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material and often very significant risks. There's a 27-year-old works for the DNC who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks and they become concerned to see things occurring like that.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
we don't comment on who our sources are.
But why make the suggestion about a young guy being shot in the streets of Washington?
Because we have to understand how high the stakes are in the United States, and that our sources are, our sources face serious risks. That's why they come to us, so we can protect their anonymity.
But it's quite something to suggest a murder. That's basically what you're doing.
Well, that others have suggested that. We are investigating to understand what happened in that situation with Seth Rich. I think it is a concerning situation. There's not a conclusion yet. We wouldn't be willing to state a conclusion, but we are concerned about it. And more importantly, a variety of WikiLeaks sources are concerned when that kind of thing happens.
And welcome back to Hannity. So in a recent interview with the New York Times, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange had some harsh words for Hillary Clinton and the mainstream media. Let's take a look.
The American liberal press, in falling over themselves to defend Hillary Clinton, are erecting a demon that is going to put nooses around everyone's necks as soon as she wins the election, which he is almost certainly going to do.
Now, he was not mincing words there, but that's not all. In other interviews, Assange has said that he has, quote, significant documents that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign. Here to join us and explain more, the man himself, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Julian, how are you, sir? Welcome to the program.
G'day, Sean. I'm well as can be expected for being detained for 6.5 years without charge.
You know what? I understand. You know, part of me in the beginning was conflicted about you. And I'll tell you why. I believe in privacy. I believe that people, especially when it comes to private emails, personal emails, etc., and I think people have a right to that privacy. On the other hand, you have done a lot of good in what you have exposed about how corrupt, dishonest, and phony our government is, and I applaud that. I think that's good that we know that. Do you understand people when they talk to you about the privacy issue?
I do, and we've exposed a lot of governments. WikiLeaks has, we specialize in bringing the First Amendment to the world. We were always very surprised that one of our biggest battles would be trying to bring it to the United States under an Obama administration.
Yeah, that's interesting you say. Why do you say that that's a surprise to you?
Well, because if you see the rhetoric coming out of the Democrats is that they're pro-civil liberties, and an important part of civil liberties is respect for the First Amendment and the rule of law. And that has broken down under the Obama administration. And Hillary Clinton was part of that process. She has, and the Obama administration has, attempted to prosecute more journalists and journalistic sources under the Espionage Act, that same Espionage Act that she was being investigated under, than all previous presidencies combined.
Yeah.
Not just more than any one of them, than more than all of them combined. So there's, under Obama, an epidemic has developed of abusing national security laws to crack down on what is legitimate use of the First Amendment.
You said to PBS that you have a significant amount of information. The information itself is significant pertaining to Hillary Clinton's campaign. You will be releasing it in several batches as you are finishing it from a journalistic standpoint. How many batches, as you described them, do you think you'll be releasing, and how soon?
Tricky question, Sean.
Well, that's actually a pretty simple one. That's not tricky.
The first batch is reasonably soon. We're quite confident about it now. We might put out some teasers as I don't want to promise anything because you have to see how the formatting goes, but we might put out some teasers as early as the next week or the week after.
Last question. It's not really hard to hack into these even secure systems, is it? I've talked to some real smart computer friends of mine. They say it's far more simple than anybody would ever know. Is that true?
It is. I just want to say one thing. In the FBI report released Friday, I agree with your analysis. It is very strange that was released Friday afternoon on a Labor weekend. I do think it draws questions as to what sort of game the FBI is trying to play. But there is, Hillary Clinton says that she can't remember what a C in bracket stands for. Everyone in positions of government and in WikiLeaks knows it stands for classified confidential. And in fact, we have already released thousands of cables by Hillary Clinton. Here she is, Clinton. See, that's her signature, Clinton, with the C in bracket right there.
Wow.
Thousands of examples where she herself has used this C in brackets and signed it off, and more than 22,000 times that she has received cables from others with this C in brackets. So it's absolutely incredible for Clinton to lie. She is lying about not knowing what that is, but it's a bit disturbing that James Comey goes along with that game.
Wow, Julian Assange, fascinating. I do hope you get free one day. I wish you the best. Thank you for being with us.
Over the past 24 hours, there has been some amazing online investigation work being done into the death of Seth Rich. Of course, this is being done by regular citizens because the FBI, who should be doing it, is not allowed to because it is becoming more and more apparent that this is an actual cover-up. And there's definitely some pieces of the puzzle that are fitting together. The first interesting development involves a good friend of Rich named Joe. He's the general manager at Lou City Bar. It is said that Joe is the last person to have seen Seth alive. Joe also happened to be at the White House 4 days before Seth's murder. He was in the White House visitor logs, and you can see from his photos on his Facebook that he was there. So what's the big deal? A lot of people tour the White House. What the big deal is this picture here. As you can see, there's a very clear view of this pool. When you look at a blueprint of the White House, you can see that that Oval Office is the only room that lines up with that pool, which means Joe was in the Oval Office that day, which is not a regular place that tourists are allowed into. So what was Joe, a bar manager and friend of Seth Rich, doing in the Oval Office under the Democrats' administration 4 days before Seth's death? And maybe there's a completely unrelated explanation for this, which would be absolutely fantastic, but for now this is what we know. I really don't want Joe to be connected from this, but we just have to put that out there. Joe said that Rich was unusually drunk that night. The 27-year-old DNC staffer could normally throw back Bell's beer for hours without a problem, but that night he was uncharacteristically unsteady on his feet as he made his way out the door. This was just not Seth. I never saw him drunk or even tipsy. So we have to allow for a possibility that Seth could have been drugged that night. The toxicology report hasn't come back yet, and even if it did and he was drugged, obviously that would be suppressed. But Joe did tell CrimeWatchDaily.com.
I heard there was a bunch of robberies lately by a man with a silver gun in the area.
Really? A man with a silver gun. Did he have a mustache and a top hat? It's like he's describing Oddjob from N64's GoldenEye with the golden gun. Yeah, Joe, that'll really throw the cops off your trail for sure. It was a man with a silver gun.
A man with a silver gun.
Yes, I'm a man with a silver gun. No big deal.
Be on the lookout for that, folks. Joe also went on vacation right after his dear friend's death. I'm not saying anything. I really hope Joe had nothing to do with this. I'm just stating what we know, and you can draw your own conclusions from this. That Seth Rich was unusually drunk. He had a friend working at the bar who had met with someone at the Oval Office 4 days prior. It's interesting. The next thing that we know is that if Seth left the bar at 1:45 and the police responded to gunshots at about 4:20 a.m., that leaves us with about 2.5 hours where we don't know what happened. Apparently, Seth did say he was going to go to the Wonderland Ballroom on his way home, but I haven't read any reports confirming that he was actually there. And even if he was there and he stayed until close at 3 a.m. in his unusual drunken state, it would have been about a 30-minute walk home, not double that. And even if it was that, there's a lot of cameras on this way home. Somebody went out and mapped where all these cameras are. Why wouldn't one of those been looked at? If there's such a big reward out for this information, even if you owned a private camera, why wouldn't you be looking to see if you picked up Seth walking home? Or maybe you have looked and he wasn't there. Maybe he was shoved into a car at Lou's Bar by a man with a silver gun and driven near his house and shot. It's just interesting, and I'd love it if there was a way to find out if there was any images of him walking home. Because apparently he was talking to his girlfriend at the time that he was walking home and attacked. So the police responded to the sounds of gunshots. I don't know who called the cops, but that would be interesting evidence as well. The police showed up wearing body cams, and Seth was alive and conscious when they found him.
The officers who were there, and they said, yeah, he was quite talkative.
So he hadn't lost enough blood to lose consciousness at this point, and the hospital he went to was less than a kilometer away, which meant that he probably arrived to the hospital alive as well. There is an anonymous medical leak that has said that he arrived alive, he had surgery, he was stable, and then there was some very suspicious activity around him and he suddenly died. Of course, it's hard to know when it's anonymous. From what I read, it was very detailed medically, and you'd have to at least be a doctor to be able to fake that. From what I know from my medical and surgical career, it does line up with the injuries. The other interesting thing that would give motive to kill Seth Rich was he was working on a website called iwillvote.com that had to do with a class action lawsuit that the DNC was under for suppressing Bernie supporters. There were two different databases, one for Bernie and one for Hillary. And of course, the one for Hillary helped voters, and the one for Bernie suppressed the voters, and Seth worked on both of them. That alone is enough motive to kill him, regardless of if he was the WikiLeaks whistleblower, which I still think he is. But Rich's family and the Democratic left-wing press is saying that there's no ties to WikiLeaks, all of this is fabricated, it's a joke, which is, interesting that if your child had passed away, you would think that any type of investigation work, even if it doesn't lead to anything, is still better than nothing. The reason why it's kind of suspicious is that Rich's family spokesman is from the DNC crisis management firm, and he's acting smug as shit on Twitter. So this guy says it's imperative that someone get in touch with Seth Rich's family and show them what Brad Bowman is saying to the press. Likely they don't know. And Brad Bowman responds, lol, oh, they know. If they're going to kill someone and try to repress that, they're also trying to repress the family's response as well. And it's just so transparent that Brad Bauman is working for Hillary Clinton as well, right? Anyway, this is what we know for now. I'm going to keep updating with more information as we know. And if you don't hear from me again, it's probably because the man with the silver gun got me. I died in a botched robbery. Please avenge my death, you guys. And keep doing it for Seth Rich, because his name was Seth Rich, and he is a hero. And because of that, he's dead.
Just this past Sunday, a young man, Seth Rich, who worked for the Democratic National Committee to expand voting rights, was shot and killed in his neighborhood in Washington.
Hey guys, it's the Truth Factory here, and I'm coming to cover, or I should say uncover, more clues and puzzle pieces into Seth Rich's death. I have some pretty big things to blow out of the water today, and first I want to talk about this guy, Andrew. He got Seth his job at the DNC and was supposedly his mentor. Less than a month before Seth was killed, he moved to Boston because of a six-figure job there. Okay, great. The day that he announced to the DNC that he was leaving his job to go to Boston is the same day the last DNC email is dated. It's kind of interesting. Did he have something to do with the email leak, or was he trying to stop it? I'm sure Seth is not the only one who knew about the iwillvote.com voter suppression scam, and I'm sure he would ask his coworkers and mentors about it. So here's where it gets weird. Andrew posted this to Twitter. Today I learned a group of pandas is called an embarrassment. #PandaFacts. Now the original post is in regards to a type of software where pandas are text speak, but if you look at the date on this, why would you make an inside tech joke to somebody who's dead? We also know that Seth was obsessed with pandas. Even the news covered this, and a lot of his usernames had the word panda in it. I think panda is synonymous with Seth, and I think this was a slant at Seth.
And you can see in that picture of Seth and Kelsey a panda bear, one of his other big passions.
You could obviously take this to mean that Andrew was calling Seth a traitor. He also said this. But man, imagine how disappointed Pepe Twitter is going to be when they find out Seth was Jewish. Which seems like Andrew was just kind of a dick and maybe not best friends with Seth. These tweets have since been deleted since people started pointing them out. A little strange. But here's the biggest thing, I think. We know that his friend Joe was at the White House, and so I wanted to see if maybe Andrew was there too. And ding, ding, frickin' ding, White House visitor logs show that Andrew was at the White House a few weeks after Seth's murder. For someone who moved to Boston a couple months ago, why would you fly all the way back to Washington and take a tour of the White House in a city that you had lived in for years? What's changed that all of a sudden, maybe I'll do a tour of the White House today while I'm in Washington? Also, you can notice that he went to the executive building in the tour. It's very, very suspicious. And last night, Seth's Reddit account was found, and it did have his name in his email, identifying that it was his account. Nothing much political was here, just everyday posts. The account was about 6 years old. But then another account was found that he made only a few months before he died, called Pandas for Bernie. And here we can see that he was a hardcore Bernie supporter and did not like Hillary Clinton. Here's like a little poem he wrote here about his feelings, so they're pretty passionate, and this shows his allegiance to Bernie. And after finding out about the IWillVote.com scheme, he would be disgruntled and maybe enough to leak the emails. Craig Murray, who has close ties to Assange, said, "The source had legal access to the information. The documents came from inside leaks, no hacks, discussed at the corruption of the Clinton Foundation and tilting of the primary election playing against Bernie Sanders. I think Seth was going to take down Hillary in a class action lawsuit against the DNC for suppressing Bernie voters, and maybe these emails were Seth's insurance policy, like if I die, make sure the world sees this sort of thing." One more quick piece of information. I had talked in a previous video, Guccifer 2.0, who is a known hacker, posted this, stating that Seth was a source. You can see that the woman he's talking to there, her name is Robin Young, and this is what she had to say on Twitter. "People are asking me if I gave info about hashtag Seth Rich to the news, media, or police. I did, and no one cared. Thank you at WikiLeaks for your post." And that just confirms what we already know. This is a huge cover-up. There's just so much mounting evidence that we're finding. And I know that everybody in the law enforcement knows this too. It's just a really sad state of affairs. We need to drain the swamp, and we need to get vengeance for not only this, but the other trail of bodies that Hillary has left behind in her career. She needs to be accountable for her atrocities. Thank you. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. So I've been digging into this Seth Rich thing, maybe a little too deep. Haven't done anything illegal yet. I just want to touch on Andrew again, looking more into what he was doing at the White House. His visit there lines up with the Next Gen Summit speak that he was invited to there on that day, so that checks out. Unless there was anything suspicious that happened there in which he had an alibi for. Anyway, we're going to cross him off of our cork board here, but I'm still suspicious of Andrew, and here is my theory on him. Andrew is a really smart guy. He really understands data science and how it can be manipulated. That's his job. That's why he gets paid the big dollars. And here he is in a podcast about data science and the election.
In terms of culture, I think, a lot of the differences stem from there as well. Mm-hmm. I think when we're talking about elections, we're talking about a lot of very passionate, committed people all working towards the same end goal. And so what it does is it creates almost like it feels kind of silly to say, but almost like a military mentality in that sense of, if you've worked in politics, you've been in the trenches, obviously less physical danger, but, at the same sense, you've been doing something with the people around you that the people who haven't worked in that can't understand really. In this case, we're doing it because we're trying to save the world. And there's definitely that thought process where, look, if you're going to put your life into politics, you got to kind of have a bit of a sort of, a God complex in a way where you feel like, whether or not I do my job is really going to impact the future of the world.
So he's definitely able to manipulate data to get a certain outcome. My theory is that he was the one who set up the data system on the voting website IWillVote.com that helped Hillary and suppressed Bernie voters. When I looked into the employees that worked at the DNC in 2016, Andrew and Seth were the only ones I could find that were in charge of any sort of data. My theory is that Seth found out about the two-tiered system and knew Andrew had to have done it. Being someone who cares about justice and is a huge, passionate Bernie supporter, I think he threatened to implicate Andrew and the entire DNC in the lawsuit. By the way, if you haven't heard of this lawsuit, it's because the general media isn't covering it because we all know that they are shills, making Clinton bucks on the side. And this theory makes sense when you look at the suspicious tweets and messages Andrew put out after Seth's death. So I think Andrew then goes to the DNC and tells them what he knows of Seth, and then Andrew gets out as soon as he can and takes that job in Boston to get away from this thing before it explodes, which is a smart move. And now Seth knows that his time at the DNC is limited and is so disgruntled by the corruption that he gets the leaked emails. That is my theory. I think it makes sense. Also, a fellow YouTuber named George Webb went to Lou City Bar and talked to Joe Capone about Seth Rich. Joe apparently said he wasn't even in Washington the night that Seth was murdered, and he was with his family on vacation, which makes sense why his Facebook had pictures of him on a trip dated July 11th. So why did he do an interview stating that he was there and offered to give Seth a ride home? If that was a lie, so was the thing about the man with the silver gun.
I heard there was a bunch of robberies lately by a man with a silver gun.
I heard there was a bunch of robberies lately by a man with a silver gun.
We can tell that this is a lie. Just look at him trying to get through this lie. It's so obvious that he was told to say that. And that silver gun narrative was being pushed in the media at this time. Wow, this just proves that these people are being told what to say. And now Kim.com has been blowing this investigation up. If you don't know, Kim has a long history of founding file hosting services with a lot of controversy along the way. In 2013, .com launched another cloud storage service called Mega. Mega uses encryption to prevent government or third-party spies from invading users' privacy. So it is very encrypted and very safe to use. So perhaps this is something that Seth Rich could have used to upload those leaked emails. Just a thought. And anyway, Sean Hannity is looking for evidence on this case, and Kim.com has come forward saying that he is the evidence. When Hannity asks to clarify, he says, "I knew Seth Rich. I knew he was the WikiLeaks source. I was involved." So there you have it. I am so excited for this. And the only kind of other interesting thing about this is Reddit seems to be scrubbing Seth Rich's Reddit account and shutting down posts about Seth Rich and shutting down subreddits that don't fit their political agenda. I will leave that up to you to think about. I'm hoping that my next Seth Rich video is the conclusion on all this. I think we are so close. And of course, if you like my videos, subscribe and like and all that jazz. Seth Rich is kind of like a vigilante hero. He's not the hero that we deserve. He's just the hero that we need right now. And because of him, he's changed the election. If it weren't for him, Hillary would probably be the president right now, which is kind of a scary thought. So thank you, Seth Rich. And we're going to keep investigating this. Thank you. Welcome to the Truth Factory, where we are a combination of the news, TMZ, and that weird guy from Ancient Aliens. Also, for no reason at all, I'm a cat now, and I can't keep my paws off this Seth Rich story. I'm obsessed with it because it just keeps getting more and more interesting. Let's talk about this woman, Jennifer Palmieri. She was Hillary Clinton's communication director during the 2016 election. Basically, she is the one who decides how things should be worded in the press. For example, we know that the wording in the media is so heavily manipulated, and we can see which companies are owned by the same people. Here's an example of articles written about Seth Rich, and you can see they're all using the word slain. That is not a coincidence. That is how the media is manipulated by people like Jennifer Palmieri. In some leaked emails to John Podesta, she ironically talks about their anti-gun violence narrative. In this email here, she's talking about a mass shooting in Kansas. She says, given the mass shooting in Kansas, 4 dead, 20 injured and counting, should we hold off on this? She's talking about an ad. Or should we make it a voting issue? So instead of being an empathetic human being, you can see she's a sociopath trying to use the death of people for her political agenda. So if they were going to kill Seth Rich and Jennifer knew about this, they might as well take advantage of that and use it as well. Make it sound like a robbery that involved one of their own that was killed by gun violence to further that narrative. There are a lot of interesting theories about Jennifer and her connection to the SEIU union, but until I know more details, I don't want to speculate too much on that. But here's a great tweet from Palmieri. Friends, please remember, if you see a whopper of a WikiLeaks in the next 2 days, it's probably a fake. This was back in November. So we know that the WikiLeaks was true. This is proof that she's a liar. We know she's a sociopath, and we know that they used Seth Rich's death and Hillary's speech for their own political agenda. I would not be surprised if Jennifer knew about the hit out on Seth Rich from the beginning here. It's just a little strange.
A young man, Seth Rich, who worked for the Democratic National Committee to expand voting rights, was shot and killed in his neighborhood in Washington.
Also, this picture started circulating around the internet, and before we blow it off as being not connected, when you look at the police report with this location of the shooting, we can bring that into Google Maps. The picture in Google Maps was taken in 2014, and the shooting happened about 2 years after that, and those trees look like they've matured about 2 years. You can also note the matching one-way sign here, and the colors on this sign match up. So unless there's been any other emergencies of this nature on this exact corner within this time frame, I'm going to say that this picture was taken during the Seth Rich murder. So who took this picture, and are there any more? Where is the footage from the body cams? If Seth Rich was actually talkative when they found him, as many people have reported, did he say anything about what happened to him? Also, I just want to quickly touch on this weird video of Seth Rich's family.
He had bruising on his face.
You can see here the father is actually mouthing the words that the mother is saying, so this shows that there's some kind of cue cards that they're reading from. The brother also looks extremely uncomfortable in this video, biting his lip to either not laugh or cry. It's hard to tell, but Seth's brother Aaron did update their GoFundMe, and it actually says, "Experience has taught us that we need help. And we need help that is free from ulterior motives or any strings attached. That's why, with a heavy heart, I have started this fund." Sounds like they want the hell away from their DNC Shield spokesman, Brad Bauman. People are definitely using Seth Rich's family for their own political agenda. I feel bad for them. I really hope that Kim.com can uncover something that helps them find the murderer. Anyway, Sean Hannity has been saying some pretty awesome things on Twitter to some Hillary supporting snowflakes. I suggest that you follow Sean Hannity on Twitter. It's quite entertaining, and Kim.com is going to release a statement, and Hannity must know it's legit to put his name on the line like this. This is an incredible time in history. I really hope that this all follows through. It'll be interesting what happens when Trump gets back from his trip, if he has any comment on this at all. And also in my last video, I talked about Lou City bar manager Joe Capone, aka the last person to see Seth Rich alive. He was actually on vacation at the time of Seth Rich's murder. So if he was told to lie about where Seth was that night, how do we know Seth was even at the bar at all? Since his timeline walking home doesn't make sense, I'm suspicious of everything now. I mean, he was shot near his house early in the morning. How do we know that whoever was going to give a hit on him didn't try to drag him out of his house down the street and shove him into a van? That would explain the bruising on him, and when he fights back, they just shoot him in the back. Also, Joe Capone was in this weird Democratic ad campaign for some reason. It's probably random, but it's too weird to ignore. And that's what we know so far, so please like and follow for more cat news in the future, and have a great day. Thank you.
From what we gather from what we've heard from the detectives, and what we learned from Kelsey, he was talking to her. She heard some noise on the phone she said, "Are you okay? Are you home?" He says, "Yeah, I'm home." And then it's, "I have to call you back." And we don't know what happened there, except he ended up shot twice in the back, and they said he was talking to the officers when they first got there. He was maybe stable when he got to the hospital, and then things went bad, and bullets and people don't match well.
He had bruising on his face, he had bruising on his knuckles, and he had bruising on his knees. So we know he struggled, but we believe someone came from behind him. Was he pushed down? What the struggle was? There's no surveillance yet that we have heard of or anything. We know the police are looking for that, but we may never know what actually happened.
If it was a robbery, it wasn't successful because the police have all his belongings, cell phone, wallet, credit cards, money, so
nothing was taken.
Nothing was taken from him. So if that's what they were trying to do, they got scared and they ran off. And he was a caring person, that he wanted to make a difference. And unfortunately, those visions, those ideas are going to have to be unfulfilled, that he's not able, and the communities or the whatever things he was working on, his biggest thing now was helping make sure that people, who wanted to vote, that they could find the polling places, they could vote, so that everybody can do what they want, and that we can have a better nation.
But he also would tell you, make the most of every moment, because you never know when the next moment isn't going to exist. And laugh.
I think that hits so many of the points about what Seth, how we wanted to live. And it's like, make a difference, do good things, treat people fairly. And try to make the world better. I think that's what Seth's goal was, make a difference.
Hello peoples of Earth, as we have seen tremendous growth and expansion of this idea that is anonymous, the people have started to awaken worldwide. People have started to look past the shadows on the wall, as this sense of rebellion, this sense of freedom is viral. We must now read what has been so pertinent about this initiative in order to further ourselves as a humanity, and we must also discover the utensils needed next to expand the movement of awakening. Anonymous fights for freedom of information. We know knowledge, information and experiences are the most powerful assets one can attain. They are all in the same. When you limit our information, you limit our lives. You take our livelihood and instill fear. We do not need your lies for your security. Our government and the peoples we recognize as the 1% keep the truths away from the masses. What is so dangerous with knowledge for all, and why is fear so beneficial for you? If the masses had the available knowledge that the corrupt did, the corrupt would no longer have the dictatorial power that they do. What they do not recognize is that information cannot be commoditized. It is a freedom that cultivates with participation. The elite feel compelled to withhold this freedom as if there is only so much information to go around, and with greed of knowledge, they prosper. If you feel challenged by this, if you are compelled to not be a commodity in their machine, but a component in humanity, then we must further this movement to a new level. The revolution is moving to a physical fruition. This is something the governments sense. They know the strength of the awakening people is rising. They have begun to expect us. As with the recent passing of laws, we see how malleable the constitutional rights of a citizen can be made as the choices are made on our behalf to trade liberties for security. Patriot Act, National Defense Authorization Act, Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement are most prominent examples. And now the most recent of H.R. 347 takes another chip of the block of freedom we are told we have. It is now a federal offense to protest on the grounds of where a government official is or will be temporarily visiting. They earn the right to Secret Service protection. We lose the right to free speech. Anonymous fights oppression. Anonymous fights censorship. Anonymous fights corruption. Anonymous fights secrecy. Anonymous fights lies. Now Anonymous moves to hack in our physical realm. Project Reality Hacking has been initiated. Under this blanket of Project Reality Hacking, new operations will be launched. Operations that hack the realm of the normative reality. Look for the breadcrumbs that lead us down this golden road of awakening. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Recently, I've been accused of being a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. So this is my response to that. 9/11 gay bombs, AIDS, war against Islam, North Korea, JFK, Google is the CIA, ISIS, open borders, UFOs, New World Order, Illuminati, Ku Klux Klan, Michelle Obama is a man. That's why they killed Joan Rivers, for exposing it. Did you see that episode of Ellen where you could see Michelle Obama's dick? George Soros, climate change, Antifa, Tim Kane's gay, Seth Rich, the NSA, that's a real conspiracy. Pizzagate, the FBI, vaccines, and the sky. Huma's mother, Juan's brother, fluoride, and I'm Maxine Waters. Comey is a liar. She was always guilty. Our good old Haley Obama tapped Trump's wires, illegally spying and always lying. Organ harvesting, Elsa Gate, free speech is now hate. Everything is fake news. Pelosi has some screws loose. Hillary's a criminal. Don't forget Benghazi. One white supremacist said everyone's a Nazi. Pelosi should retire. It's a bit concerning that her wheel's not turning. Mueller should be fired. I mean, he's overstepping and actively subverting the democratically elected president of the USA based on nothing but hysteria and hearsay. The foundation for the investigation of Russia is a hoax. It's a witch hunt. Plus, he's a complete asshole. This was a terrible way to end the song. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. Since my last video, left-wing people have tried to pick apart my FBI weapon theory, and I want to make a quick follow-up report in detail to my last video of why I think the missing FBI weapons could be an important key in the murder of Seth Rich, and answer some of the questions people have asked me. If you didn't see my last video or you are out of the loop, on July 11th, 2016 in Washington, D.C., guns were stolen out of an FBI van conveniently unattended and parked 2 miles from where Seth Rich was murdered. This is verifiable, you just have to Google it. And I've had a lot of questions from people who still think Russia did it, so let's see if I can answer some of these questions logically and see if I can change some minds today. First question, if Hillary Clinton wanted somebody assassinated, why would they need to steal guns? Wouldn't a professional hitman already have one? It's not a bad question, but guns are easily traceable and need to be registered. Even people in the Secret Service need to register their weapons. So it would make perfect sense to steal police weapons that can't be traced back to anyone. And sure, I mean, they could get unregistered weapons on the black market, I suppose, but if you're already in cahoots with the FBI, why not do that? Also, if these guns were later tied to Seth Rich's case, all they would know is that those guns were stolen, furthering the fact that the murderers or murderer was a thief, and it would end there. Next question. If you're wanting to do a hit, why would you steal a 200-pound locked case from the police? Well, if this really stems from that high up, don't you think some crooked FBI agents would be in on this? Like maybe the DC police chief Kathy Lanier, who suddenly retired a few weeks after Seth's murder? It's not hard to imagine that a cop could leave guns in an unattended van for hours at a specific location down the street from Seth Rich's house, because that's what happened. Also, the ammo was locked up with the guns, which is actually against policy. It seems a little too convenient for me, and I imagine if they went through that trouble to set it up, they would leave a key there too, or have it unlocked altogether waiting for the hit. And on that note, it is also possible that a crooked FBI officer could have been the one to do the hit. They would know how to pull it off, they would know how to make it look like a robbery, they could plant the guns and the ammo in a lockbox in an unguarded van near the shooting, break a window and call it a robbery. They just have to call in a public announcement that the weapons were stolen from the police vehicle, and no one will assume that the cops did it. They might be liable for negligence for having the guns stolen, which is probably just a slap on the wrist, but they will not be implicated in the murder from those guns. Why wouldn't the assassin shoot to kill? I actually think this is a really great question. Obviously, I wasn't there, so it's speculative based on the data that I know. Seth Rich was found bruised all over his body. By the way, one of the weapons that was stolen was a baton. And then he was shot in the back twice. This indicates signs of struggle, altercation, and him trying to fight back. And I imagine at the point the gun came out, Seth tried to run, turning his back and getting shot twice there, which is often enough to kill someone. ShotSpotter goes off, and if they're cops, they know this. They leave because based on where the bullets hit, they think he will die, which he did. And if it were the cops, this would fit with the story that his girlfriend Kelsey told, that he was talking to her on the phone and said he needed to go, seeming like somebody showed up, but he wasn't afraid. If cops showed up, you wouldn't really be afraid of that, right? So this was either done by a hired thug who is messy, which I think is unlikely considering who hired them, or they wanted it to look a little bit messy on purpose so they could pin it on a robbery and use it in their platform against gun violence, which they did. A clean shot to the head is a little bit too obvious for a robbery. I think it's important to ask these questions because it helps us get closer to who did it. And there's still a lot of questions on my side to answer. Like, if it was a robbery, why was nothing stolen? Seth was talkative when the cops showed up. Who were wearing body cams? Don't you think Seth would have said something about who shot him? Where's that footage? Why did the FBI take his laptop if he died in a street robbery? Why did the owner of the bar he was drinking at lie and say that he saw him that night when he was actually on vacation with his family? The same bar owner that was at the White House 3 days prior to his death. Why did Julian Assange, who's never been wrong, basically spell out that Seth was a leaker? Why is the family's handler, Brad Bauman, a man who is a crisis PR agent who works for the DNC, refusing to tell people who is paying him? Why would Donna Brazil, a high-ranking political analyst, ask why the family's PI is snooping into Seth Rich's murder? And that is just the tip of what is unfolding. But hey, it must be Russia, right?
Russia's hacked into a lot of things. China's hacked into a lot of things. Russia even hacked into the Democratic National Committee. Maybe even some state election systems.
That is so Russia. Hillary, stop trying to make Russia happen. It's not going to happen.
Welcome back to the Truth Factory. The reward for evidence leading to the arrest of the murder of Seth Rich is now over $500,000, none of which is being offered by the DNC. Even Martin Scarelli is putting money up, but not the DNC, where Seth Rich worked, a place that has millions of dollars. I think it's safe to say that this wasn't a botched robbery, and everybody knows it. I mean, even people who maybe believe the media at first have to be second-guessing it by now, right? With all the suspicious deaths of people connected to the DNC sweeping the nation, it's getting a little fucking spooky. Like a federal prosecutor named Barrington Wisenant from Florida, which just happens to be in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district. He just happens to wash up on shore in a suit with all his possessions and bullet wounds in his head. I'm just waiting for the left-wing media to say that this was a botched swimming. Or maybe it was another robbery. And by that I mean assassins sent to rob him of his life. This body count really isn't helping the DNC's Russian narrative. Like on July 25th, 2016, Joe Montano, who was the chairman of the DNC before Debbie Wasserman Schultz sunk her greedy little reptile claws into it, he allegedly died of a heart attack. He was 47, had no history of heart problems. Next, August 1st, 2016, Victor Thorne was found dead on top of a mountain near his home. His death was by gunshot and was officially ruled as suicide. Some of his best-selling books include the Hillary and Bill trilogy, Crowning Clinton, Why Hillary Shouldn't Be in the White House. Next, August 2nd, 2016, Sean Lucas was found dead in his bathroom in his house by his girlfriend. He was the one who served the DNC their papers from the lawsuit. Next, Seth Rich died in a botched robbery. Oh, and someone I follow on Twitter named WhisperTech, who is a known leaker of information on this case. Some of what he was leaking looked fake, but either way, his Twitter was deleted today, and he was alleged to have been taken from Ireland by the American CIA. I'm not sure if he's LARPing or if this is real, but I'm just going to mention that a tweet deleted from his account said that Seth Rich was killed by the same model of gun that was stolen from the FBI vehicle that night. I mean, I'm not even surprised anymore. I guess they're just going to have to kill everyone because no one believes them. God knows they're probably spying on me too, which is why I've been trying to throw them off with super weird Google searches. Like, I don't know how many people you know who have died in mysterious ways, but Debbie Wasserman Schultz sure knows a lot. Oh wait, she recently claimed she didn't even know Seth Rich. It's pretty weird of her to show up to Seth Rich's vigil then, right? Side note, why does her hair look perpetually damp? She looks like my dog. My dog is ugly. Well, with all of this happening, the news must just be going crazy reporting it, right? Nope. They're doing the opposite of what real investigative journalists do. They're just denying it. Just denying all the mounting bodies and saying that they're not connected. This CNN ginger who looks like a young Margaret Thatcher made a video about how fake the Seth Rich story was, but provided absolutely no facts about it. The only good thing about this was this screenshot, which is now an alt-right meme. Thanks, we love this picture. Too bad nobody likes your video. How stupid do you think we are? I hope they're paying you well, Ginger Snaps, because you're literally a prostitute. Like, if you want to prove Russia hacked into the DNC, why didn't you just let the FBI investigate your servers? If it was really true, that would be how you would actually get Donald Trump impeached. That would be the end of the investigation. But here we have the left-wing media crucifying Trump for even talking to Russia. But here's how the media spins it when NSA snooping Barack Obama did it. Does that seem off to you? Even if Trump did tell Russia something, who cares? He's the president, and it's not illegal. Do you want to know what is illegal? Cheating the primaries and killing people. In the DNC's trial, their defense was literally, yeah, we rigged the primaries, so what? Here's fucking what. Your name literally has the word Democratic in it. You lied to millions of people, and now you've ruined their faith in government and democracy. Anyone who gave money to support Bernie Sanders' campaign was cheated, and you should all be in fucking jail. That's what. But let's see all the newspaper articles and how the mainstream media is reporting this. Okay, I think we need to talk about this. Here's an infographic of who owns the media. Do you ever wonder why the Clinton News Network and the Huffington Compost are so biased? They have hardcore left-wing ties. Media Matters and Share Blue were both founded by David Brock. He has very close ties to Hillary Clinton. Also, his ex-lover happens to be James Alefantis. You may remember that name because he was the center of the Pizzagate controversy. They have shit to hide, and they know if one stone falls, so does the whole fucking wall. Guess what? That wall is crashing, and Seth Rich was the keystone. So if you're getting the news from a mainstream source, it probably can't be trusted. Seek out independent sources. Oh wait, you can't because they're all being censored and shut down for investigating these murders. Like Sean Hannity, One News Matters, people on Twitter, Reddit, social media, they're just shutting down regular people now for talking about this. The left-wing media keeps saying how disgusting we are for prying into the death of Seth Rich and how we need to leave his grieving family alone. Well, first off, we're trying to solve a murder, and it's one that might lead to the implication of all the people who are putting out these false news reports, so I'm really not going to fall for it, you silver-tongued young Margaret Thatcher. And second of all, I think this family just really wants this to be resolved. They want to find Seth's murderer and get the fuck away from Brad Bauman. He gives everyone the creeps. Honestly, this family has either been blue-pilled hard by left-wing media, they have skeletons in their closet they don't want to expose, or they're being threatened or bribed. Something is not adding up. Anyway, the one beautiful thing that came out of this is that Trump supporters and Bernie supporters are actually uniting together on this issue. So at least we have that. Anyway, like and subscribe. This cat is out. Meow. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. I think it's about time that we pull the pin and blow open the Seth Rich case. YouTuber George Webb has been uncovering some deep shit, like some really weird stuff. Some of it seems far-fetched, but you know what they say, truth is stranger than fiction, and I definitely think that has been the case as we search for the truth in the Seth Rich murder. He's played his cards down today of who he thinks killed Seth Rich, and I figured the best way to solve a murder mystery is by answering the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how. Like in the game Clue, it was Professor Plum in the library with a candlestick. Well, I've been researching this for a while, and I think today I'm ready to play my cards down as well. So put on your tinfoil hats, kids, because this is gonna be something. First, let's go through my list of suspects connected to this case, and let's see if we can Scooby-Doo the shit out of this. From my research, here are the people that I think were directly involved in the Seth Rich murder, or at least directly knew about it. Hillary Clinton, the loser of the 2016 election and cheater of the DNC primaries. John Podesta, former chairman of that loser, super interested in handkerchiefs with pizza maps. Jennifer Palmieri, Director of Communications for Hillary Clinton, also a proven liar and sociopath. Donna Brazil, political analyst, proven cheater and liar, also didn't like P.I. Wheeler snooping into the case. Robbie Mook, campaign manager for Hillary Clinton and the person who Podesta emailed about making an example out of the leaker. Ex-DNC Police Chief Kathy Lanier retired right after the murder, and she sits on the police board with Heather Podesta, who is married to John Podesta's brother. David Brock, ties to Clinton and owner of large media companies. James Alefantis, David Brock's ex-lover, center of the Pizzagate scandal, and GQ happened to name him on the top 50 most influential people in DC from owning a pizza shop. Not weird, right? I'm naming him here because he's directly affected by the information in those leaked emails. Here are some additional suspects that I think may have been involved at some level. The DNC police, the Awan brothers, who were these weird IT bros from Pakistan. They were hired by DWS to hack into everybody's BlackBerry in Congress and surveil them. They've also fled back to Pakistan. So convenient. Alpha Jallo, he's an international criminal who had been suspiciously released after his 2015 arrest. He's believed to be an FBI informant, and he was also discovered to be in direct contact with both Hillary Clinton's New York City campaign and the DNC office in Washington, D.C. He was originally in jail for being a high fence and shipper in an international car theft criminal organization. This is who George Webb thinks did it. Anyway, other people of interest in this case are Joe from Lou's Bar. He was the general manager. Andrew, who is Seth's co-worker who worked in data. Brad Bauman, the DNC creepy handler of the family. Huma Abedin, Hillary's suspected lover. Stephen Wasserman, DWS's brother and assistant U.S. attorney for D.C. Not anyone of interest yet, but maybe as the DNC trial continues. Dr. Sava, the apparent doctor who oversaw Seth Rich at the hospital. Him and his wife have been guests at Podesta events as per the leaked emails, and he has visited the White House 6 times and his wife has visited 23 times, so I'm guessing they're probably not just doing tours. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of DC. Joe Capone was also in one of her weird campaign ads, so I'm adding her in here. And there was Kim.com, Julian Assange, James Comey, which I'm going to do a whole separate video on, and I guess the man with the silver gun. Where? These are places of interest. The DNC, Lou's Bar, the White House, this abandoned hospital in DC where Seth Rich's Skype pinged to its IP the night that he died. Weird. This hospital was also used as a homeless shelter and has now been speculated it may be used to collect organs. I mean, I guess homeless people go missing in the night, right? The real hospital in Washington, D.C., Omaha, where Seth Rich grew up, the FBI has identified over 2,200 human beings for sale in Omaha. It is like the nation's capital for human trafficking. Probably a kingpin in the underground pedo or organ harvesting ring. I'm not even sure anymore. And then there's Russia. What? Objects of interest, all of which are almost nowhere to be found. the stolen FBI guns, toxicology report, autopsy, bullets pulled out of Seth Rich, surveillance camera, body cameras, Seth Rich's laptop, DWS's laptop, all the Blackberries, the silver gun. Why? Why did this happen? The DNC's leaked emails unleashed a lot of things. Seems like a lot of the businesses that are connected to the Clintons are actually storefronts with a lot more mischievous things behind the scenes. Seth being the email leaker and being able to testify against the DNC in court is enough to have him killed, but I also wonder if he had a lot more information that they didn't want out. Or was it a botched robbery? And remember, these people are evil, so if they're going to kill someone, they're going to use it to their advantage in any way they can. Okay, so here are my cards. A man with a silver gun shot Seth Rich with a silver gun, and it was a botched robbery.
I'm a man with a silver gun, got no big deal, just having fun.
I'm just kidding. Because we don't really know exactly what happened yet, I'm going to give my theory like a synopsis of a movie based on this, with a lot of creative liberties to make it a little bit more interesting. Here we go. Seth Rich grows up in Omaha. He sees people and children around him being abducted by the pedophile and organ harvesting ring. He knows who's behind it. He grows up wanting to shut it down and change the world. He's been planning this his entire life. He goes to school and graduates. He becomes a member of the DNC to shut down corruption from the inside. He hates Hillary Clinton. He starts leaking their emails. These people sit around the lunatics round table and decide to make an example of the leaker. By this point, Seth Rich has already been leaking emails for quite some time, using some sort of rootkit and sending it to Kim.com. His codename is Panda. It's a cryptic front because he's trying to uncover the biggest secret of all, the Clintons' ties to China, and how China owns the DNC and the media. Not really, but maybe. Anyway, his co-worker Andrew doesn't want to be mixed in this and tells the DNC it was Seth Rich. Then he moves away. Later, bro. These guys talk about it for like a month trying to figure out what he knows, and then they decide he has to die. They hire Alpha, who has been working with DWS already. With the help of some crooked police, they cover up the murder. The FBI give guns to Alpha and his other henchmen. The cops smash their own car window and report these guns missing. The weapons are untraceable. Genius. Seth Rich doesn't die right away. They need to keep him alive. They take him to the weird abandoned hospital where Dr. Sava works. They harvest his organs and then sell them to the highest bidder. They frame the death on a botched robbery, and Hillary Clinton uses his murder in her campaign speech to further her narrative against gun violence. Kim.com finds out word that Seth Rich is dead and sends all the emails to Assange. Brad Bowman becomes Seth Rich's family's handler and threatens them with exposing their secrets, which I'm not sure of yet, but I'm sure they're good. There you go. It might sound crazy, but that's it. This is how I would write the movie if it were up to me. And Seth Rich would obviously be played by Ryan Gosling, of course, and Hillary Clinton would be played by Neil Patrick Harris in drag. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching. Meow. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. I have some interesting news to report. First, let me start out with a clip of this senator getting the CNN reporter to admit that Russia was a big, fat nothing burger.
I don't see any evidence of collusion. Do you?
No.
And another clip where she's trying to probe here, but she knows she can't actually say shit.
Nothing to see there.
Well, tell me what you think is to see there, and I'll comment on it.
What do you think would be the motivation?
I don't think there's anything there. So
why would they do it? Your comfort level with all of this.
My comfort level, the only discomfort I have is with folks in the media trying to create a venality without having the courage to specifically tell me what the venality that I should be concerned about is.
Also, CNN finally fired Reza Aslan for his tweet saying this piece of shit is not just an embarrassment to America and a stain on the presidency, he's an embarrassment to humankind. Wow, CNN is getting a lot of bad press this month. First we had the Kathy Griffin decapitation shit, and then the video of them faking that Muslim protest, and now this. Well, to be fair, it's not all his fault. Remember that Reza is a known cannibal and has eaten human brains, and on at least one occasion that we know of that's on camera. And we all know that eating human nerve tissue can cause Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, aka mad cow. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this zombie motherfucker is probably on the guest list at the Podesta spirit cooking parties as well. And I'm sure most of you watched Comey's testimony, but if you haven't, or we need a little bit of a refreshment, I'm going to sum that up with some things that we learned. Number 1, Trump was never under investigation. 2, there's absolutely no evidence that Russia altered the election outcome in any way. 3, Loretta Lynch pressured Comey to cover for Hillary Clinton. This happened when Lynch pressured him to describe the Hillary emails as a matter and not an investigation, which he agreed to do. But he says something that just seems off in this context. He says, "This isn't a hill worth dying on."
The Clinton campaign at the time was using all kinds of euphemisms, security review, matters, things like that for what was going on. We were getting to a place where the Attorney General and I were both going to have to testify and talk publicly about it. And I wanted to know, was she going to authorize us to confirm we had an investigation? And she said, yes, but don't call it that, call it a matter. And I said, why would I do that? And she said, just call it a matter. And again, you look back in hindsight, you think, should I have resisted harder? I just said, all right, this isn't a hill worth dying on.
Now, was he just using this as a turn of phrase, or was this a slight hidden reference to Victor Thorne being killed on a mountain for exposing Clinton's dirty secrets? Was Comey being threatened by Lynch? 4, Trump did not collude with Russia. 5, John McCain is senile and, called Comey President Comey.
Comey, the President Comey, case of President Trump.
6, Comey leaked his own memo. And he actually kind of lied under oath. He claims that he leaked memos of privilege and classified conversations to the press only after Trump tweeted, "James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press."
I asked, President tweeted on Friday after I got fired that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter.
However, the public record reveals that the New York Times was quoting these memos the day before that reference tweet. So he leaked it before then and lied about why he leaked it. So honestly, we can say he just leaked it solely out of retaliation for getting fired. Also, there's another theory of why Trump really fired Comey. And yes, it has to do with Seth Rich. It's a bit of a stretch, but bear with me, it's a good one. In late April, Comey was in New Zealand. This is a Googleable fact. Googleable? It's a word now, I guess, because I said it. It's a word. A spokeswoman for the New Zealand Prime Minister Bill English said New Zealand's government is hosting a conference this week with a number of senior officials from overseas, but she couldn't comment further due to specific security requirements. A super secretive meeting in New Zealand. But why New Zealand? What does it have to offer? Is it its hobbity splendor? Do you think Comey went all the way there to fucking simply walk to Mordor? What else can only be seen in New Zealand that is illegal to import into America? Kim.com. Legend has it that Kim.com began negotiations with the Trump administration to have all of his charges dropped in exchange for his providing of evidence that Seth Rich, not Russia, released all the Hillary Clinton and Democratic Party documents and emails to WikiLeaks. And that culminated in the unprecedented secret meeting between Kim.com FBI Director Comey and CIA Director Mike Pompeo in New Zealand on April 23rd. The Trump administration's secret meeting with Kim.com, however, was nearly thwarted when FBI Director James Comey arrived prior to CIA agent Pompeo in New Zealand to begin negotiations. But Kim.com refused to meet privately with Comey unless Pompeo was there too. Trump found out about this and was so outraged with this backstabbing attempt that he fired Comey. Now, before you dismiss this whole story, the Washington Examiner reported on April 20th, this was before the trip, it was reported Wednesday that the CIA and the FBI are launching a joint probe into a federal employee possibly behind the theft of documents on the CIA hacking program that had been published by WikiLeaks in recent weeks. During a speech last week, Pompeo assailed WikiLeaks as a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia. So they were investigating a possible connection between a federal employee to the leaked emails in New Zealand. And Kim.com also tweeted, New Zealand police should question FBI Director Comey today about the theft of my data. I filed this formal complaint. Now, this tweet came out on April 24th, which is the day after the supposed meeting, which would fit with this Kim.com story. Comey stole .com's data. .com. Oh yes, guys, Trump already knows about Seth Rich. It's his trump card, and now would be the time to play it. Drain the swamp. The Russia thing is completely over. Now let's get back to solving Seth Rich's murder. And I know I kind of wrapped up the Seth Rich thing in my last video, but it's not over until it's over, and they're all behind bars, so I'll keep updating as I need to. Thank you. Have a great night. Meow. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. Want to give a quick shout out as I'm almost at 100 subs, and I want to thank you all. This is another Seth Rich video, and for me, I just want to say it's very easy to go straight off the deep end into conspiracies because they are fascinating. But I want to try to stay at least a little closer to home with facts because you solve cases with facts, not theories. I have a lot of questions, and so I actually went to a friend of mine who is a detective and asked a lot of questions about this case to see what is normal operating procedure and what is not. And so I will go through that Q&A that I had at the end of this video, but first I want to review some interesting Seth Rich clips. I'll put links of all these full videos into the description below. First, a little clip of Mr. Brad Bowman saying that he isn't getting paid.
May I ask, are you doing this pro bono? I am.
Isn't that so nice of him to do this pro bono with no political motivation behind it? Is he doing this for altruistic reasons? Well, for some reason, I don't think so. Next, Rod Wheeler said that Seth Rich went to MedStar, so the hospital is confirmed.
He went to MedStar.
He went to MedStar, so we
Oh,
can't
yeah,
confirm that he went to MedStar.
Next, I want to share a clip of Seth Rich himself asking a question.
Excuse me, Seth Rich with the DNC. I think several of you have spoken about provisional ballots and rejected ballots. I guess we've looked at, as an outside practitioner with a vested interest in training our voters, how do we get better access to data that tells us why ballots are rejected, why ballots are cast as provisional, so that we can analyze that and then develop better training guides?
This is proof that Seth Rich was questioning ballot integrity. The next video is actually from Seth Rich's vigil.
So right now, there's no suspect. Nobody knows a motive. There's no reason why this man was gone down. It's basically just somebody who is walking late on Sunday night, and for no reason at all. Apparently, there may have been an attempt to rob him, but that isn't clear. Just a terrible situation. There's the DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, who made it to the Tribune.
Another super confusing element to this case now is this guy named Mark Mueller. And in one interview, they called him Mike Mueller, so either they got his name wrong or he gave them a fake name.
I heard 2 sharp gunshots very quickly. I looked at the clock and it was 4:19.
That's Mike Mueller. He lives in the Bloomingdale neighborhood. He heard the shots. He saw the cops tending to the man in the street.
Now, Mark Muller is a neighbor who claims he was there when Seth Rich was shot. There's also another neighbor named Scott Roberts who people were saying is actually Mark. I went through an insane amount of creeping on social media and determined that they definitely are two different people that definitely know each other. Anyway, they were both at Seth Rich's vigil, and Mark got up to say a few words.
I just wanted to say a quick thing that I was there when he got shot, and they walked him past me so I could see him and identify him if I knew him in the neighborhood. And the police officer said he didn't even know he was shot. So if it gives you any comfort, I don't think he had any pain, physically.
Now let me just re-quote that for clarity here. He said, I just want to say a quick thing that I was there when he got shot, and they walked him past me so I could see and identify him if I knew him in the neighborhood, and the police officer said he didn't even know he was shot. So if it gives you any comfort, I don't think he was in any pain. Now, the first impression I got when I was seeing this is that this is a crisis actor. You know, you see them in the Sandy Hook, you see them in the Boston bombings. This seemed rehearsed to me. Now, I don't know if that's true that he is a crisis actor, but I do know for sure that Mark is an actor. Here's proof. This is him and his lover. Now, he said he was there when Seth Rich got shot. The second thing is his wording is super confusing here. The way he says it sounds like they picked up this man who had just been shot and walked him around the street to ask bystanders if they happen to know who he is. I have a medical background, and that just does not happen. You put the victim in the ambulance and you get them the fuck to the hospital. Once they're in the ambulance, you can look through their wallet and you can take their healthcare card, even if they're awake. It's implied consent that you are trying to save their life. So no, you would not wheel a man around on a stretcher asking bystanders, hey, do you know this guy? No, you just get him in the ambulance. And this is where I asked the detective, would a cop ever tell a bystander details about the victim like he didn't even know he was shot? And his answer was a dumb one might, and might not even know what happened. People like to act like they have more information than they do sometimes. But he said a detective definitely would not do this. So basically, a cop can say anything they want, especially if they're stupid, but they really shouldn't legally do that. Now, it is possible that Mark just meant he happened to be standing near the ambulance and he was trying to see if he could identify Seth Rich and overheard a cop saying he didn't even know he was shot, but that is not how he worded it at all. He said they walked him past me so I could see him and identify him. And now Scott Roberts, he has his picture on Twitter, so we know that he was also at Seth Rich's vigil. You can see Mark up front in the blue, and he tweeted this: 2 gunshots or fireworks at 4:19 a.m. Police now on the scene, no sirens. 4:19 is kind of a weird thing to say.
I looked at the clock and it was 4:19.
You would think most people would just say it's 4:20. Now, Roberts does post a ton of tweets about the neighborhood to the police. Now, could he be a secret FBI informant? Yeah, absolutely. Or he could just illegally own a police scanner. Now, the part about the no sirens thing kind of threw me off at first, so I asked the detective about this, and he said you wouldn't use your sirens if you thought the suspect was nearby because nothing says run away like a loud siren. You would come in with your lights off and try to sneak up on them, which makes sense to me. So this is where I'm going to finish the video off with some questions and answers from a detective. I like this so we don't go too far into left field making assumptions without facts, because again, facts are what puts people behind bars, not theories, even though theories are super fun. I asked him about the stolen FBI weapons and if it would be against policy to leave them in an unmarked vehicle for a long time unattended. His answer was it depends on the unit, and if everything was stored properly, technically you could leave them in the van, but it would be a very stupid thing to do. I asked him if it was normal not to release an autopsy or toxicology report or any surveillance or body cam footage to the public. He said they typically won't release anything during a homicide and will keep stuff on holdback evidence, stuff only the killer would know. They can't release footage from an ongoing investigation until it's time for court. And then I said, well, I thought footage could be released to the public so that way if anyone knows anything about the suspects, they can come forward, like surveillance footage, for example. He said it would be specific and that would be a last resort. You would try a ton of stuff first, like you would go door to door in that area where it happened and ask around first. But as far as I know, I don't really think they did go door to door and ask neighbors for their security footage, so I think that that's super strange. The neighborhood where he lived had tons of cameras because they had an incentive rebate program. There were like 50 cameras on that street, and the cops only took footage from one camera, which is at the corner store. Maybe that was the only camera that was close enough to what happened, but that seems odd to me. He said it depends on the quality of the cameras and where they're facing and lighting conditions. A camera that doesn't see anything won't help. I asked if it was abnormal to take a laptop if he died in a street robbery, and he said, no, it makes sense. They would take the laptop to try to trace his last 24 hours and come up with a timeline. That would be pretty standard. I asked if the family could use the Freedom of Information Act to get the footage released to the public, and they said not during an active investigation. I asked how long an investigation would be open for before it's a cold case, and he said it depends. At least a few months, could be a few years. Cold cases are usually like 10 years plus. And he said, how do you know that he's even really dead anyways? Maybe he's on an island with Tupac. And I said, that is a conspiracy theory. Although there is a theory out there that Seth Rich, being Jewish, some people think he's in a witness protection program in Israel with the Mossad. And I asked, does that ever happen? And he said maybe in the Bourne Identity. So that's it, folks. There's some question and answers from a detective. I hope that gives some clarity to why the police might be doing things. Anyway, this is what we know for now, and I'll keep updating as more information comes out, because I can't wait 10 years for this to become a cold case. We need to solve this now. Thanks. Have a great night. Meow. Hillary body count 2017. Let's fucking do this. Here we go. McDougal, Mahoney, Vince Foster and Tulliard, Wiley, Grover and Brown, Walker and Wilson and Martin, Monica, Peterson, Shelton and Thorne, Wiltshire and Ferguson, Coney, McCassell, Coleman and Hillary's a bitch, Higgins and Miser and Collins and Wise, Razor and Parks and Seth Rich, Castle, LaRoe and Henry Boggy, Ashley, Winters, Rhodes and Seal, Kettles and Bunch, Lawhorn and Lucas, Milan, Friday. Oh my god, this is real. This is crazy. On to the bodyguards bonus round. Barkley and Reynolds and Henley and Kelly, Sable and Robertson too, Densberger, Williams, Steve Willis, McKeenan, and even Conway LeBlue. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. I am your conspiracy cat, and I want to talk about Scalise. Now, his shooter, the psychopathic, child-torturing James Hodgkinson, had an assassination list. And of course, everyone on that list was a Republican politician. But I don't think this was just some crazy guy who snapped and wanted to kill Republicans. This was calculated. There were 6 names on that list. What did these 6 people have in common besides being all Republicans? Well, you may have guessed it. All 6 members of government had an active role in stopping human and child trafficking, and if we include Scalise, then we have 7. There's Jeff Duncan, Scott Desjardins, and Mo Brooks. They were all involved in a committee of foreign affairs with content involving tier rankings and a fight against human trafficking and a pathway to freedom, rescue and refuge for sex trafficking victims. There's also Trent Franks, who was on that list, who was working against human trafficking, Congressman Jim Jordan, and Morgan Griffith, who was also clearly fighting human trafficking. Here's a newsletter he wrote exposing human and child trafficking happening in the United States. So there you go. How about that? Put a tinfoil hat on me if you want, but here are the facts. A man tied to working with the Democratic government, reports say he even visited Bernie in his office, shot a Republican with intent to kill, and was going to try to kill other Republicans on his kill list, all of which were directly involved in stopping human trafficking and creating laws to prevent that. And I'm not some super sleuth, magic, investigative detective. All I did was Google this to find this out.
It's not an accident at all.
Yet why isn't the mainstream media, with real investigative journalists, talking about this? Why are they doing such a piss poor job covering obvious assassination attempts? Well, because you have to remember that mainstream news is not there to give you correct information that you can trust. They are for-profit companies trying to make money for their shareholders, many of which have their own political motivations. And right now they're being told to promote a false Russian narrative with absolutely no proof and to crucify anyone who even whispers the name Seth Rich. And that has to tell you something. Speaking of Seth Rich, George Washington University Forensics did an in-depth profiling study into the murder of Seth Rich, and the conclusion that they came up with was, "We do not believe the offender is a robber, nor a robber who killed. Offender had the ability to kill and brought with them the instrument to do so. Though we do not know what other items Seth may have had in his possession, his watch, phone, wallet, and necklace were not stolen, nor was Seth's body reported to have been further accosted or degraded. With such a sanitized crime scene and no emotional indications, this is not offender's first kill. In support of our assertion, the offender has killed before and is, by the FBI definition, a serial killer." Now, off the top of your head, can you maybe think of someone who may have had a motivation to have Seth Rich killed, who has also been surrounded by people dying mysteriously for years and years, like tons and tons of people? So many people, in fact, I can't even list them all, but I can try to sing it really fast. Here we go. McDougal, Mahoney, Vince Foster and Tulliad, Wiley, Grober and Brown, Walker and Wilson and Martin, Monica, Peterson, Shelton and Thorne, Wiltshire and Ferguson, Coney, McCassell, Coleman and Hillary's a bitch, Higgins and Miser and Collins and Wise, Razor and Parks and Seth Rich, Castle, Leroy and Henry Boggy, Ashy, Winters, Rhodes and Seal, Cattleson, Bunch, Lawhorn and Lucas, Milan, Friday. Oh my god, this is real! This is crazy! On to the bodyguards bonus round. Barkley and Reynolds and Henley and Kelly, Sable and Robertson too, Densberger, Williams, Steve Willis, McKeenan, and even Conway Blue. Alright, that was weird. But anyway, they think it was a serial killer, which I found interesting. Now, the term serial killer just means that they have killed multiple people. So we're either dealing with a psychopathic serial killer or a hitman. But a psychopathic serial killer usually pick very specific victims, like a red-headed woman who looks just like the killer's mother. Often it has to do with a sexual or power thing, and they derive pleasure from killing their victims in very specific and usually painful ways. But this report says that the killer may have just shot the bullet from the vehicle. Apparently Seth didn't even know he had been shot as it was in the back, and he was still alive when he was found. That doesn't fit with something a psychopathic serial killer would do. And if there was a psychopathic serial killer on the loose, they typically can't help their compulsions and would try to kill other people in that area. So there should be other people fitting the same demographic as Seth Rich, young Jewish males. But when you look at the demographic of the other unsolved murders in the area, one of these things is not like the other. In fact, out of all the murders in DC in 2016, 96% of the victims of homicide were non-white. This leads me to believe that this was not a psychopathic serial killer, but indeed a hitman. Unless the serial killer's thing is that they only kill people that Hillary Clinton tells them to. Maybe that's their thing. Maybe that's their fetish that they derive pleasure from, killing people that Hillary Clinton pays them to kill. Now, in the study, they do talk about the Clinton or hitman theory, and they say it's unlikely unless Seth Rich was poisoned, knowing that if he didn't die from his injuries, he would die later from the poison. Now, legally, they had to do a toxicology report. It has to be done, but it was not released, which I think seems strange. And I can also say that we don't know how professional of hitmen they actually had. All you need is some low-level idiots or some crooked cops with access to stolen guns to pull this off if you have a cleanup crew at the hospital. If James Hodgkinson is any indication of the hitmen that they hire, that should tell you something. And that is a summary of what I think is actually going on. And of course, this is something that you will not find in the mainstream media, but you will find it here on the Truth Factory until I die in a botched robbery. Have a great night. Welcome back to the Truth Factory. I'm your based red pill conspiracy foul-mouthed cat, and I want to make this video. Actually, I don't. This is something I don't want to make a video on, but it just won't die. So we might as well talk about it. It's Russia. Now, I can admit that there is a definite possibility that Russia tried to influence the 2016 election, as foreign countries have tried to influence every goddamn democratic election for years. The USA has, in fact, tried to influence other countries' elections at least 80 times since the end of World War II, and Russia has tried at least 36 times. But I can also argue that Israel tried to influence the 2016 election, because Clinton's top 6 super PAC donors during the election, who collectively donated over $37 million, were Jewish, many of which were actively involved in pro-Israel political efforts in the USA, including Haim Saban, who donated $10 million, and George Soros, who donated $7 million. But if the media reported that, they would get called anti-Semitic. And I mean, I'm probably going to get called anti-Semitic just for bringing up these fucking facts. But if high-ranking Russian Americans donated $37 million to the Trump campaign, that would be important information, right? Regardless of all the attempted election swaying over the last 60 years, according to a database amassed by political scientist Don Levin, an estimated average effect of partisan electoral interventions is only about a 3% increase in vote share. 3% increase. So let me go into fucking Rain Man mode and math the shit out of this. He's not a man, he's a love machine. Check him out, So there's 538 electoral votes. Hillary got 232 and Trump got 306. That means Hillary had 43% of the electoral votes and Trump had 57, a difference of 14%. So even if we subtract that average percentage of 3% that would be affected if the Russians actually did influence the election, Trump still would have won by 11%. That should be the end of it there, but it's not. Do I think that Russia tried to influence the election? Yeah, maybe. Obama and Hillary sure fucking think so anyway.
Russia's hacked into a lot of things. China's hacked into a lot of things. Russia even hacked into the Democratic National Committee.
Hillary, stop trying to make Russia happen. It's not going to happen.
Do I think that Russia hacked the DNC servers and leaked Clinton's emails to WikiLeaks? No, but there's almost no way to prove it if they even did.
I don't think anybody knows it was Russia that broke into the DNC. She's saying Russia, 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 but maybe it was. I mean, it could be Russia, but it could also be China. It could also be lots of other people. It also could be somebody sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds, okay?
Anyone that adept at hacking into a government server is using more than just a VPN to do it. And if someone did hack into their servers, why didn't they let the FBI investigate? It's like calling the cops, saying that your house was broken into, and then when the cops show up to investigate, you tell them to piss off, but you still try to claim the theft on your insurance anyway. It's obviously suspicious. Also, as I've made dozens of videos about it, you all know that I'm a Seth Rich truther. Julian Assange has all but flat out said it was him, and as far as I'm aware, on record he has never been wrong, and he would be the one who would know. But the real issue here is the leaked emails, because that is what Russia is being blamed for. It's kind of like if you got mad at your significant other for breaking into your phone that doesn't have a password, and then they find out that you're cheating on them, and you're like, well, if you didn't look into my phone, you wouldn't have found out I was a bad person, so it's your fault. But regardless of the messed up, morally corrupt things in those emails, Hillary Clinton used a private email server to send confidential documents. Had she not done this, her emails would have been a lot more secure and may have not even been able to be hacked. So again, what is worse, exposing corruption or the corruption itself? I mean, she's even fucking smashed blackberries with a hammer. I mean, that's something that innocent people do, right? And even after all that, I don't think that that is the real reason why she even lost. The average American probably didn't even care about the leaked emails. The only people who cared were Pepe autists like myself on 4chan who would have voted for Trump anyway.
Are retarded, and in some ways, they're geniuses.
If anything, the grab her by the pussy comments Trump made were far more damning, as it was something that could be played on mainstream media And it vilified Trump as a sexual deviant. Like, so what? He likes cats. Meow. The real reason that Hillary lost is because she tried using identity politics. She didn't visit the swing states in her campaign, and she didn't have a clear message. Bernie Sanders even had a clear message, and if it wasn't for DNC's corrupt cheating of the primaries, he had a chance to be president. I mean, at least he had a chance to beat Hillary Clinton during the primaries and run against Trump. However, Bernie and his wife are apparently being investigated right now, too, for bank fraud, so there you go. You can't trust anyone. And now all of a sudden there's news articles coming out about how Obama knew about Russia hacking and he didn't know how to punish Russia. Like, come on.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections. I told Russia to stop it.
Tonight, President Obama, for the first time, publicly blaming Russian President Vladimir Putin for hacking the 2016 U.S. election.
We're grasping at straws here, but everyone's all like, well, the CIA thinks it's Russia, so I think it's Russia too. I don't know where that voice came from. The CIA should not be held up as a paragon of justice. Do you know how many countries the American CIA has fucked over? That is enough content for a whole nother video. But let me just end on this note. Do not trust the garbage CNN is trying to feed you. In fact, believe the exact opposite. Thanks, truthers. Have a great night. When I turn on my TV, what the hell do I see? Low IQ me staring blankly right at me, reading mean tweets from Trump, acting oh so offended. But you started it and now you regret it, 'cause you are fake news, fake news. CNN is fake news, that's why everybody hates you. Why can't you tell the truth? Fake news, fake news. CNN is fake news. They will pander to anyone just for the views. And they're starting to attack Reddit posters. Their egos are fragile cause of Clinton voters. Because what else can they do but threaten to dox all of you? Clinton, Clinton, you must serve her. Push Russia, not the Seth Rich murder, even if it's a big ol' nothing burger. Come on, please stop telling lies. Because who can we trust if we can't trust the news? Propaganda perpetrated by the... No, we can't say that. No. Fake news, fake news. CNN is fake news, that's why everybody hates you. Why can't you tell the truth? Fake news, fake news. CNN is fake news. They will pander to anyone just for the views.
Your organization
You are attacking our news organization.
Your organization.
Can you give us a chance to ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can you state...
Welcome back to The Truth Factory. Huge news today about Seth Rich. You should know who he is by now, but if you don't, I have made several videos about him. He is the person who leaked Hillary Clinton's emails to WikiLeaks and was mysteriously killed. Proving that Seth Rich did this would completely destroy the Russian hacking narrative and put the DNC into even more hot water. Do you get it? 'Cause Debbie Wasserman Schultz looks like fucking noodles. Seth Rich was trending on Twitter 1 minute and then mysteriously not the next. Actually, it's not mysterious at all as this story is being suppressed. First thing to hit today was that Rod Wheeler is suing Fox News. Rod Wheeler alleges that Fox News quoted him saying things that he didn't say and that Fox went to Donald Trump with this story before it was posted online, basically accusing Trump of being actively involved in pushing the Seth Rich narrative to lower the heat of the Russia story. So this makes me think of a few things. One, there's definitely something going on with Rod Wheeler, probably being threatened. And secondly, that this is a direct response to suppress the media's attention that is placed on Debbie Wasserman Schultz right now, as I think they have found something huge on their laptop and that will be released shortly. Oh, sorry, that was just a picture of noodles. Yeah, no, that's much worse. Go back to the noodles. The reason that I think something fishy is going on is that there was a 20-minute leaked audio tape that was tweeted by WikiLeaks today where Rod states a few interesting things. First, that Seth Rich's brother Aaron was clearly covering up anything that had to do with Seth's emails. Aaron has Seth's computer and probably phone, and told Rod basically to move along, citizen, nothing to see here.
To see here, please.
And that Rod was very suspicious of what was on that laptop and how it seemed like there was a strange cover-up that was happening by the family where they were saying, don't look into the emails, just prove it was a botched robbery, which makes you question why. The obvious answer is they're probably being threatened in some way, or there's money that could be involved, which I will get to in a bit. So why would a detective who thinks this way now come out and say that the whole story was done by Donald Trump to take the heat off of Russia? Well, you would do that if someone said that they were going to kill you and your entire family, or if they offered you a large sum of money. And also, now Trump is involved somehow. Trump, to my knowledge, has never even mentioned Seth Rich, and to me this is an obvious play by the DNC and their media puppets to try to discredit the true story, as they know that they are losing this battle fast.
The president had no knowledge of the story, and it's completely untrue that he or the White House involvement in the story. And beyond that, this is ongoing litigation, and I'd refer you to the actual parties involved, which aren't the White House.
The linked audio tape is long, but it's worth listening to, so I'll put a link to that in the description, which I imagine will be played at the hearing of this lawsuit, as it pretty much debunks the entire thing. Secondly, WikiLeaks tweeted out a clip from Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning mainstream liberal investigative journalist, an amazingly credible guy who was recorded having a conversation with Bukowski, who is the one who funded the Seth Rich investigation and who hired Rod Wheeler in the first place. Seymour is now denying the entire conversation and says that the call was just gossip, but that's some pretty big gossip, as Seymour says that the FBI and their cyber unit uncovered that Seth had sent some juicy DNC emails to WikiLeaks and asked WikiLeaks for money.
An extensive sample, I'm sure dozens of emails, and said, I want money.
Which is something I hadn't considered, and it might be one of the reasons why his brother Aaron didn't want it investigated, because it might affect his legacy or how people view him. The way I see it is that Seth Rich had incredible knowledge at his fingertips, and that was an extremely risky thing for him to send to WikiLeaks. Literally, his career and his life were on the line if he got caught. I would call that danger pain. It really doesn't affect how I think of Seth Rich. So the question is, did Seth Rich get money from the emails? Who paid him? Was it Julian Assange, or was it the multi-millionaire Kim.com who hated Comey and Clinton? The second question is, how much money did he get, if any, and where is that money now? Because if Aaron Rich is sitting on a few $100,000 or more, of course you wouldn't want people snooping into that. It's also possible that the DNC paid the family to keep quiet, as you know, killing an entire family would be pretty suspicious. Something else interesting is that Aaron Rich is a senior software engineer at Northrop Grumman, which is a defense contractor that provides cybersecurity, and this company also donated $100,000 to Hillary Clinton's campaign and another $90,000 to the DNC campaign. Now, Hersh says that Seth Rich had a password-protected Dropbox, so to speak. I imagine this was done through Mega, which is how Kim.com was involved. Seth Rich gave his Dropbox password to a few friends, kind of like, if I die, there are people out there who know the truth. I would wonder who he gave his password to. Obviously, Julian Assange, Kim.com, and just throwing a guess out there, maybe his brother Aaron. I don't want to vilify his brother, but I think his behavior is very suspicious. Hersh also mentioned that people who are investigating the Seth Rich case wanted Hillary to win, as under Trump they might be out on their asses. So there's another motive to suppress this information. Hersh says that the DNC made the Russia hacking story up. They knew it was a leak, but say that the Russian narrative was an American disinformation operation, meaning that the government was involved constructing it. He mentions Brennan, who is the CIA director under Obama, and goes on to say Trump's not wrong to think they all fucking lied about him.
Trump's not wrong to think they all fucking lied about him.
So that's some pretty big gossip. So just to confirm the facts, Rod Wheeler is suing Fox News and claims that Fox News was working directly with Trump to take the heat off the Russia investigation. A leaked tape of Rod talking about this debunks that narrative. Hersh denies telling Bukowski anything, but then a leaked tape of Hersh confirms that the DNC police and FBI did gain access to Seth Rich's PC files, and Hersh confirms that Seth Rich contacted WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks did get the password. He had a Dropbox.
And that the government made up this Russia hack story to try to demolish Trump. You know, no big deal. But this whole Rod Wheeler lawsuit is now just a distraction from the Awan brothers, and the fact that Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother is the federal prosecutor on Imran Awan's case, and who also might have been the federal prosecutor on the DNC case, which may have been linked to the death of Brenton Wiseman Jr. So the puzzle pieces are starting to fit together, and it's super weird and interesting. And I just want to thank everyone who's supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much. A link to that in the description. Have a great night, guys. Meow.
Just in here. Back to the Truth Factory. So the Republicans and the Democrats couldn't come to an agreement on immigration reform. Even though Trump had repeatedly said and had even tweeted that he won't negotiate on any deal with DACA that doesn't include a wall, an end to teen migration, and an end to the lottery system, the Democrats and all of Congress still overwhelmingly voted to protect illegal immigrants in favor of cutting funding to the military and other services without budging. But don't be fooled into thinking that the Democrats' motives are anything other than self-serving here. This is just a game, and they don't actually care about the Dreamers, they just care about the votes. This was made abundantly clear in a leaked memo from January 9th, written by Jennifer Palmieri, the former director of communications for Hillary Clinton's campaign, where she writes, "Dreamers are a critical component of the Democratic Party's future electoral success." Now, this whole debacle led to a complete government shutdown for 3 days. But this shouldn't be surprising because this transparently evil man named Chuck Schumer already declared this destructive strategy in a 2013 interview.
Someone goes into your house, takes your wife and children hostage, and then says, let's negotiate over the price of your house. You know, we could do the same thing on immigration. We believe strongly in immigration reform. We could say we're shutting down the government. We're not going to raise the debt ceiling until you pass immigration reform. It would be governmental chaos.
So the Democrats had a full-out orchestrated tantrum because they hate America and they didn't get their way. And even though 95% of Republicans were in favor for keeping the government operational versus only 5% of Democrats, the media tried to spin this hard to blame Trump somehow. This 3-day shutdown, according to CNN, led to the apocalypse. Perhaps even worse than the apocalypse that happened when net neutrality was repealed. And at this very emotional and trying time, Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon, and this man had become the only beacons of light left in this dim, dark, shadowy world. Of course, they're only telling the truth, and they're not using fear-mongering propaganda tactics to push out clickbait headlines like, Trump may have signed Earth's death warrant. Government shutdown risks an undetected asteroid strike. And of course, the always accurate and reliable tabloid Newsweek reports Trump could destroy the entire human species. The mental gymnastics of this narrative is actually quite fascinating. And I suppose maybe in some extremely convoluted way, they're trying to say that without the government being open, there would be no one to notice if an asteroid was coming towards Earth. But the fact that these so-called credible news sources are trying to convince the public that there is a probable chance of an asteroid ending all life on Earth because the United States couldn't figure out a budget deal is like, what? Just hypothetically, let's say that the government wasn't shut down and they did notice an asteroid coming towards Earth. What the hell are they going to do about a giant space rock moving 100,000 miles an hour? Does CNN think that we'd be able to pull off the plot from Armageddon? No, we'd be much better off just letting China take this one anyway because they probably have Gundam robots. And that's better than trying to get Ben Affleck to do anything because he can't even do Batman right. And thanks to CNN, a bunch of old people were probably pressing their life alert buttons because they think somehow a nuclear asteroid is coming towards Earth because of Trump.
I'm having chest pain.
Anyone who doesn't eat Tide Pods for breakfast should be able to see through this panic-inducing propaganda that has been pushed out by these CIA shills. This, of course, was done as a huge distraction from the real story that they don't want to talk about. The memo, which has major BuzzFeed-esque clickbait potential. The government shutdown made the Democrats look really bad, but is not near as bad as the truth that this memo could reveal. And I can only imagine that it says exactly what I've been saying for months, that the Obama administration illegally obtained FISA warrants to spy on people. And if we're really lucky, it says that the DNC colluded with Fusion GPS to get the fake Steele dossier, and that the DNS records that connected Trump Tower to the Russian Alfa Bank were forged under the advisement of Obama to illegally obtain a FISA warrant to spy on Trump. Because if that's the case, that could end the Russia investigation now, and we could be talking about the destruction of the DNC. But the excuse from Democratic Rep. Adam Schiff of why the memo shouldn't be released is because Americans wouldn't be able to understand it. Is this memo about quantum entanglement written by Stephen Hawking? Because if not, Schiff is acting like a patronizing, pompous ass here.
Russian bots, because Russian bots are pushing their narrative out there. It's in a redux of the campaign. We have Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and Russian trolls and bots saying, you know, hashtag whatever the GOP narrative is.
And even if the memo is complex, he's greatly underestimating the modern internet community and our collective weaponized autism. As of now, the government shutdown has ended without any real resolution, as 28 Democrat senators changed their votes and decided to reopen the government for a few weeks. Even though we don't know exactly what Rhino Mitch McConnell promised the Democrats, they've bent a knee and ended their shutdown for practically nothing. I mean, the Democrats look incredibly bad to the average American right now, but I guess maybe they have a plan that we just couldn't possibly understand. But as far as I see it, Trump has them bent over a barrel, and Schumer can now join the hashtag #MeToo movement because he just got wrecked. And that's all I wanted to say. If you like what I do, I have links in the description to my PayPal, my Patreon, my Maker support, and my Bitcoin wallet. Thank you so much. Thanks for your support, and have a great night.
Thank you for calling the White House. Unfortunately, we cannot answer your call today because congressional Democrats are holding government funding, including funding for our troops and other national security priorities, hostage to an unrelated immigration debate.
I'm having chest pain.